Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. I was just saying that we are more than a year old on Under the Hood with a message that patterns that are created in childhood impact us as grown-ups. And I was just telling Bruce, who is our guest of honor today, that these are things that we don't talk about so much, but are the underpinnings of everything that goes on in a person's life. Honestly, by the age of 7, a lot of the core values are kind of locked in. And we spend sometimes the rest of our lives just trying to kind of find them and wiggle through them and change them and shift them. But they're incredibly powerfully important. And Mastering Under Pressure, this Under the Hood program, is about interviewing leaders, people who have been through the muck and back and have lessons to teach us. So welcome, Bruce. Bruce Stout. Just a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit. You're going to tell us more about you.
Happy to be here.
Began his career as an accountant, of all things. He has an extensive international tax and finance background and was a lecturer for various organizations addressing international tax shelters, strategies, and treaties between nations. His international experience eventually led him to advising known entertainers living in various countries. This ultimately led Bruce to establishing a business management firm with offices in California and New York. He spent several years as CEO of a California-based entertainment company, producing various programs, including an exercise video starring I don't know if he was the governor at the time, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's the author of numerous marketing and strategic books and courses. He was a spokesperson for First Transamerica Life Insurance Company, among many others, teaching accountants, attorneys, business owners, and financial services professionals how to be more effective client developers. This is only a small piece of what Bruce does. We've got, serving on boards, working with nonprofits. And the one thing he says, he jumped out of an airplane once, never again, is a musician and experienced scuba diver, pilot, and diver. So there you go. So Bruce, welcome.
Thank you.
Happy to have you. And we see that you're in your beautiful studio back there, correct?
Yes, we're here in Sarasota, Florida, with some beautiful weather for a change instead of hot and humid. Yes, it's where we are.
So Bruce's background is actually not one of those things that you put on Zoom, and it's a real background.
That's right.
So, Bruce, I sent you these questions. You said, well, they're not the typical questions that I get when I'm being interviewed.
Right.
But this is not the typical interview. So tell us a little bit, if you could, about your family of origin. Just kind of.
Well, I was raised in suburbia, lower middle class in New Jersey. My mother was a 1950s housewife, and my father was a salesperson for DuPont. I had a younger brother, and we had some family around us. It was somewhat of a challenging childhood. My mother was an alcoholic, and also she was a drug abuser. And my father was pretty much absentee, either on the road or emotionally when he was around. So it was a little bit of a tricky background, of which I share with many, many others.
Yes, and I appreciate that, because again, a lot of times people don't share these things, but they impact us, obviously. So can you tell us, because of this background, or what kind of patterns did you develop as a child and a young adult that have led you that you could look back and say, yeah, that had something to do with where I am today?
Well, first of all, it taught me how to get along with virtually anybody. And the reason I say that is that with my mother, you never know who's going to show up in the morning. So you had to learn to deal with multiple personalities. And so that became a skill, because that became a survival skill that I had to learn. And the other part of that was that she was also, in addition to being drug and alcohol abusing, she was also very neurotic, and anything that she wanted to do, the answer is always no. No, you cannot have a bicycle. No, you cannot go with your friends. No, is that sort of thing. And so what I learned from that, and I developed a skill of getting around no. I didn't take no for an answer. So I found various routes of doing the things as a young person that I wanted to do. And so that stood me well as well.
Absolutely. So again, from my experience, I spent many years working with people and in therapeutic and clinical situations,
Right.
and some of these kind of difficult, abusive, challenging childhoods, we develop other parts of ourselves that become very, very skillful. And this idea of that I have to kind of, walk on eggshells and be ready for the next thing really kind of sets us up as very, very keen observers.
Yes, that's for sure.
Right. So how has that sort of served you?
Well, in good ways and bad. One of the things I learned was in business that no is going to compel me to find a yes, which is a really good thing. I found a way around a lot of challenges, and the bad side is that when you learn how to get along with people, that's a double-edged sword, because in that process, you can also become a people pleaser, which doesn't serve you. And it also has an impact on self-esteem, which doesn't serve you. So there's positives and negatives built into all of that.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, being a people pleaser, you lose yourself. The core person, you're not sure who you are at some points. And, you become an actor on a stage. Which can serve you in business, because I did very well with everybody in business, whether it was the banker or the client or the agent or the lawyer or whomever. But it was always playing a role. And so in that, you lose part of yourself, and you know that there's something missing, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. And so I went through that.
And so, given that you had that experience, when did you start to notice that it was kind of getting in your way?
Well, in my mid 30s, or actually late 30s, I was running a business management firm. I had several companies I was running. I was helping to build a stuntman school. I had my own not TV, radio talk show in the LA market. I was producing a rock group called Redbone. I was going in all different directions. And I went in to get a flu shot because I wanted to make sure that it was going to be okay to continue. And I woke up the next morning very ill, and wound up being sick for 3 years with Epstein-Barr virus. So it was a hiccup in my career that was major. And as I went through that, financially, it was really difficult. It cost me my health for that period of time, and I had to find a way back. And so that made me really begin looking at what was this Epstein-Barr really about? I caught a virus, or was it about a way for me to check out? And I realized after getting some therapy and after working with some people that it was a way of checking out, as a way of saying, I can't do this anymore. And I want to do this in a way where I'm not going to get blamed for just walking away. And so that's how that changed my life.
Interesting, right? How the mind and the body
Yeah.
do work together. Anybody that
Yes.
knows my work, it's really very much about making that connection.
That's right.
Right? And so that we are one whole person,
Right.
not one part of us escapes.
That's right.
And so I think that's a really important message. And I so appreciate you sharing this, because again, these
Mhm.
are things that I never knew about you. We wouldn't necessarily get into this conversation.
Right.
But how many people out there really are struggling with health oriented issues that have a psychological basis.
Mhm.
They go hand in hand. So
Yeah.
how did you use then those skills that you learned to
Mhm.
make your way back?
Well, There were a couple of steps along the way. For one thing, I found Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and I worked with her programs to kind of deal through it. Because when you lose the finances, the career, even the marriage, there's a grieving process that you go through. It's a death. And so working with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's organization helped me to get through that grieving process. And
Okay,
then I
I'm going to
was
stop you
very
for one
fortunate.
second, just in case anybody is not familiar with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She is renowned for establishing the 5 stages of grief, and they don't necessarily work in order, but there's anger and there's bargaining and I forget all 5 of them, but ultimately it is coming to a place. There's depression, there's a place of coming to acceptance, and
And it's the acceptance that you get to ultimately. And also, I was very fortunate. One of my clients introduced me to Nathaniel Branden, who is known as the father of self-esteem. And I worked with his wife and partner, Devers Brandon, for quite a long time on that whole self-esteem issue. And that really became a way to turn things around and to develop the necessary skills to make sure I didn't fall back into the same trap again, and to move forward. And so that was a very important time in my life.
well, Nathaniel Branden, I remember his books, and I use still to this day a lot of the techniques of that I learned through that.
Nathaniel was the godfather for my child, for Brandon, my child.
How wonderful.
Yeah, I have a son, Brandon, who is not named for Brandon Nathaniel Branden. He was named for Brandon Tartikoff, who at that time was running NBC. So just yeah.
So
So what happened at that point then is I said to myself, I don't want to fall back into that same trap again. I don't want to repeat that mistake. So I looked and I said, what do I do really well that will not allow me to fall into that? And I realized I really knew how to help people build their professional practices. So I started going to insurance companies and saying to them, one of your problems is that you don't know how to get your agents to get enough business from accounting and law firms. You need more referrals and you're not getting them. What would happen if I went out and I taught those accounting and law firms how to build their business and have it sponsored by you? And the quid pro quo would be that they'll refer their business to your agents. And I knocked on lots of doors and got a lot of no's, but I finally got Transamerica to say, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Why don't we try that? And so that started my way back with becoming that corporate spokesperson.
then
And
coming back to the point where you said, taking no was not really an option.
exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like an actor. You keep on going to auditions until somebody finally says, "Sure, we'll give you a role." So yeah, that's sort of how that
I
worked out.
always think of the resiliency as sort of that punching bag, that's got that sandbag underneath. You knock me down and I come back up. You knock me down and I come back up.
Exactly.
And this is the story of success. This is the
Yes.
real story of success. If I could just even reiterate from just what you started with, a difficult childhood and having to manage a household where there was not a lot of education in terms of emotional education. You took your own and
Right.
figured it out. And then you got to a certain point that took you really far. But until we honestly deal with the underneath piece that's still causing the problems,
Mhm.
it's going to come back and hit us again.
Well, there's also, at that time when I was doing all those things, also I felt I learned later about the imposter syndrome, and and I realized, why, they're going to find out that I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and everything is going to change, and then you realize that to a certain degree we're all learning as we go along. The careers that we take. So there are no imposters. There are people that are just striving to move forward.
Exactly. And the thing about the imposter syndrome, I had a teacher who said to me one time, you just have to stay one step ahead of your clients.
Exactly right. Yes.
You go really far, just let that one step ahead. Right?
It's like, I have a nephew who is a doctor, and it's, observe one, do one, teach one.
There you go. So through these events,
Yeah.
could you tell us just like one more story where it was a really big, not only the illness, but as you went along, another aha that really has propelled you even further along to where you're actually pretty well grounded in your career and very successful. What else comes to mind?
That moment came when I realized that it everybody's looking for a better way of doing things, and those better ways change as you go along. So what I learned is that you have to be very adaptive in the services that you provide to your clients, and that was a real eye opener for me. I would have people tell me, you keep changing what you're doing. You keep changing, And I would say, yes, absolutely. I keep changing what I'm doing because that's how you adapt and that's how you service your clients. And so that was a big aha for me along the way, is that, you keep learning, you keep testing, you keep finding new ways to do things. And certain people are comfortable with that, and some people are not comfortable with change. So the people I work with are those that are comfortable with saying, yeah, let's try that. I'm willing to do that.
So there you go. So that creative side, right, gets an opportunity to continue to expand and grow.
Exactly.
And I'll also tell a quick little story that the way that Bruce and I got into a more in-depth conversation was on a networking call. And I don't know whether I brought it up or you brought it up. We brought up the word spirituality. And
Yes.
Bruce and I went running. Oh, this person and that person and this. Tell us a little bit about how that plays out in your life, if you would.
Spirituality. I was brought up as a Roman Catholic. I lost total interest in that as I got older. I didn't feel comfortable with that, and I've been on a spiritual quest like you. So I went through all different kinds of things. I went through something called Tsukio Marikari, which is a Japanese religion that concentrates. It's almost like Buddhism, but it has a little twist to it. I worked with an Indian guru who was Wayne Dyer, whom I think you know. Was working with an Indian guru named Brazil, and I reached out to Wayne, and I said, Wayne, you wrote this book, Manifest Your Destiny, and you worked with this Indian guru. What can you tell me about that, and who is it? And so I did then. I reached out, and I spent some time learning the Indian way of doing things. And several others along the way. And what I learned was that none of them have exactly the right answer. So instead, I developed my own spiritual cosmology, which is purely mine, and that's a comfortable place for me to be. But there's a strong sense of direction, of what I would call very deep cosmic love that we can all tap into, and for me, that's the spirituality that I embrace.
And as we were talking a little bit before this, this is the time when there is a lot of incredible turmoil and hate in the world. Yeah. And I didn't make up the things that I've learned. You didn't make these up. We put them together. We learned from this person, and this mentor, and that teacher, and this reading, and so on. Yes. But my experience of spirituality is that the highest level is love. Every one of the great religions, every one of the great spiritual teachings comes back to the concept of love.
Yes, I agree.
Right? And so we need a lot more love in this world.
Yeah. We do.
And from your story, Bruce, it starts out with self-love.
Sure does. You have to find that too many of the messages we receive growing up robs us of that self-love. The messages being, no, you're not good enough. No, you're not smart enough. No, you can't get into that college. No, you can't get an athletic scholarship. Whatever the no's are, they rob you of that. And our society is built around that. So unfortunately, I think too many people in this world never find that. And those of us who do, I think we're very fortunate. But I know you have, and you know I have, we've worked really hard to
Yeah.
do that. And
Yes.
that's so important.
And that is, people say to me all the time, well, what's the work? The work. The work is exactly what you just described. The work is self-reflection. It's really raising your level of awareness. Oh, I see, I do that. Oh, behavior runs in patterns, and that is the essence of this show. Behavior runs in patterns that impact us as grown-ups. Some of
Right.
the behaviors are extremely functional because they kept you alive,
Right.
surviving in a household that was difficult. And you, through your own intelligence and creativity, you figured it out. Oh, if I do this, then this will happen. If I do that, that'll happen. And
Right.
so we create a package of behaviors that take us up to a certain point. And
Hmm.
then as we, as humans, want to strive, because that is our natural tendency, is to become bigger, to become better, to do more, to give more, right? We hit obstacles. I can't do it if I'm trying to please everybody. I can't do it if people are getting really annoyed with me. I can't. So then we stop.
Hmm.
Exactly what you did. You stopped. You got stopped. Your body stopped you.
Hmm.
Epstein-Barr, a lot of people tell you there is no cure. That's not true.
Right.
It's not necessarily true in totally Western medicine, the way that they've understood it. But through a whole mind-body experience, we can heal, right? And then we take ourselves on to the next part of the journey. And sometimes we get stopped again. That's the work.
Yes. That's
That's
exactly right. And part of that is recognizing that mind body connection can be broken very easily. And we're constantly reminding yourself. I mean, for example, I every once in a while I'll feel what I think is a recurrence of Epstein-Barr, and I'll be on a trip and I'll come back and I'll be exhausted and I'm saying, oh, Epstein-Barr sent me again, and then I think it through and it goes away, just
right.
magically disappears.
Yes. So I had breast cancer. So that was my sort of wake up call, not
Hmm.
sort of. That was my wake up call. And the part of me that had been repressed for a really long time was just, my body said, no more, no more, no more.
Didn't
And
know that about you, Tina. That's very interesting.
it's a whole period of my life. I had just gotten divorced, just left my first husband after a very, very difficult marriage of 34
Hmm.
years, and moved into New York City, and I was going to start my new life. I moved in December. In February, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
And so all the ideas and everything that I had planned, I had to kind of reevaluate. And at the same time, we get to use these experiences. We can get to use these experiences as our greatest teachers. And just on your point of the Epstein-Barr, for me, it became, I will not allow my body to go into a stress response around the cancer. I will not. It became a mantra. So every
Hmm.
time it would start to come in, and that fear, well, we go into fear, and then what happens? The stress response happens, and we get all the cortisol and all the things that make our bodies hospitable to illness.
Right.
So I wanted to make my body inhospitable to cancer. So I got very good at, you're just not coming in. You're not helpful. You're not taking me to a good place. You're not coming in. Right?
Exactly.
And and I had metastatic cancer, and so doctors would say to me, oh my God, people with your diagnosis. I said, would you like to know what I did? Nobody wanted to know.
Well, because it's so antithetical to modern medicine, and doctors, they don't want to see that, or they just don't believe it. I'm not sure, but that's a damaging thing for
Right.
us.
So mind, body,
Allopathic medicine has its place if you have a broken bone, but it doesn't have its place in what we're talking about.
exactly, exactly. So we are just about out of time, as you and I know that there is so much more to talk about, so much more to learn, and so much more to grow. What's on the horizon for you next?
Well, I'm at a stage in my career where I'm having more fun. I have a local TV show that I do here called Two on the Town. And we're going out and we're going and helping local charities to get known. We interview them on our show and we get them corporate sponsors, and that's a lot of fun. I'm having a great time with that. And other than that, I'm still running my businesses. We're always adding services to our client base, and that's fun. And we have now a relationship with a Canadian company who wants to buy us out. So we're looking at that as a possibility as maybe my exit strategy when I'm ready, which I'm not, but I will be at some point. And so life is good. I'm playing some golf and getting to the beach, doing all that and having some fun.
Wonderful. It's about having fun.
Mhm.
Right.
It is.
And I know that Chilo, my assistant, will have your information, how people can get in touch with you.
Right.
I want to thank Adriana for being with us today. And Adriana, do you have any comments, questions before we go? We have
I mean,
another.
I have one, I have one, I guess, one question, and that is, when you hit what I would call rock bottom, at least in your mind would be rock bottom,
Mhm.
what were you able to, who was instrumental in helping pull you up? Or was that a series of people, or did you do that from within?
It was a series of people. Once again, the whole Elizabeth Kubler-Ross program was instrumental for that.
But when did you know? So when did you know that? When were you willing to accept somebody's hand to pull you up? When was that moment? What was
When
that?
when I didn't know of any way out, and I thought maybe there wasn't any way out, and I said, I really, really need help here. And that's the moment that I became open to getting help. Before that, I thought I could do everything myself. I'll figure all this stuff out. I've done it all my life. Why not now? And I got to a point where I just couldn't.
Mhm.
And that was the moment.
So depression, I'm just going to add this piece. Is it about feeling hopeless and helpless? Those are the two things that, as we assess, kind of that depression, it's on that scale. And so the message is, you are not hopeless, you are not helpless, you just may not have the answer. But there are people that do have the answers.
Right, exactly. And that's why you're here, Tina.
Yeah, that is my thing. And I'm so grateful, really, really grateful for the education and the training and the teachers and the passion that I have for this, because as you and I were talking before, this is the key to world peace.
Love.
Self-love, it's love. It's getting to know yourself well enough, being able to pull your resources, having people pull it out of you, support you, guide you, that you begin to remember who you are.
Right.
Right? Without all those negative messages. And I always think about these little infants that are being born, they come out very pure. Very pure.
Right.
Right. And so this is really my plea to anybody and everybody that's listening. Please, 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 if you need some help, get some help. Reach out. We're here at all different levels, in all different places, and all over the world. So I thank you, gentlemen, deeply for being my guest. And we will spread this all over, your messages, and continue to move on to helping people grow. So Mastery Under Pressure is your host of Under the Hood. And anybody that wants to get in touch with me, you'll have lots of different ways of doing that as well. Sheila will put my information. Mastery Under Pressure is a program that teaches you all the skills that you need in order to be able to manage this mind and this body in very simple, very, very practical, doable ways. We have answers. You just got to want the training. All right. So thank you again, Bruce. Thank you for being
Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana, always for being my support here, and Sheila as well. Bye for now.